Listeners? Name of the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. Thank you so much for being today. We're really very honored and very lucky to have Mr. Brian, a special agent, to talk about a topic. We wrote it as a young people, but actually is affecting everybody. It doesn't matter how old you are. And I spoke with Brian before, and he mentioned to me as it is even senior now getting attacked. We'll not be able to cover everything, and Brian promised me he will come here more than one time. So we will talk today again about cybersecurity for young people, and we promise you we'll have other talks later on. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. I, for having me. Thank you, everyone, for having me. My name is Brian Chemicki. I'm a special agent with the Secret Service. I've been with the Secret Service for 26 years now. I'm focused on forensics, digital forensics. So we do everything from cell phones to refrigerators to vehicles to help solve cyber crimes. Part of my duties and responsibilities is to do these presentations and try to educate the public as best we can. I think it's the number one way, whether it's employees at your business or educate the public on the threats that are facing online. It's not going to be 100%. Even the most educated people are still fall victim to these crimes. You got to realize that the people that are committing these crimes against our folks, elderly, all the way down to the kids, this is how they put food on the table. This is their job. This is why they're good at it. If you fall victim to these crimes, don't be ashamed. Everyone does. So just, again, I appreciate you guys having me. This is a very awkward topic, the cyber crimes against children. It's very taboo. It's something that we don't like to talk about. It's very awkward. And some of the topics we're going to get into is very uncomfortable. But it's something that we have to talk about and we have to address with our kids. I kind of equate this to letting your kids outside of the house. Right? When they're younger, you say, hey, stay in the yard, be home when the lights come on. You know, hey, the street lights come on. That was always a rule as a kid for me. When the street lights came on, I had to come home. We have these talks with our kids about being safe. The internet, the world's wide open. The amount of things that are on the internet and inappropriate material and everything else, and we just don't talk to our kids enough about the threats that they can face. We give them a cell phone and you walk away and just let them have at it with their cell phone. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. We need to open this dialogue with our kids and talk to them about the threats that are online. Okay, so just real quick, why am I here at Secret Service? What's kind of interesting, just a little background on the Secret Service. At the time we were created, coincidentally, Abraham Lincoln actually signed in the law creating the Secret Service. It was the end of the Civil War. And at the end of the Civil War, things were winding down. They had all these soldiers, Union troops that they could trust. They ended up recruiting them and creating the Secret Service, which we would go in and combat counterfeit currency. At the time, 1/3 of all the money in circulation was counterfeit. There was no universal bank. All the different states were printing and making their money. So people in Mississippi didn't know what the money looked like in North Carolina and vice versa. And 1/3 of all the money in circulation. We couldn't let that out to the public. And if the public knew that 1/3 of the money that you were carrying was possibly counterfeit, the whole economy would have collapsed. So Lincoln actually signed in the law in April in 1865, creating the Secret Service to combat counterfeit currency. And what we would do is we'd ride into town, help out the local sheriff. They would arrest the counterfeiters. We'd ride off into the sunset. We were never there. We didn't exist. And what's crazy is that in April of 1865, Lincoln signed into law the Secret Service, and that night he was shot and killed at Ford's Theater. So kind of irony of it. So we were under Department of Treasury for years, and it wasn't until Garfield was assassinated before we finally started protecting heads of state. And what's interesting enough is there is a portion of the Secret Service that broke off and created the FBI. Because at the time, once we got counterfeit under control, we started investigating homicides, murders, gambling, all this sort of stuff. And then those guys end up breaking off and creating the FBI. So from there, we do protection and we still do investigations. We do identity theft, cyber crimes, computer breaches, all stuff. We still do protection. Obviously, the president, vice president. One of the things that we've picked up is they call the NSSEs. It's the National Special Security Events, like the Super Bowl, that sort of thing. We do all kinds of events like that. The United Nations General Assembly in New York, we protect all the foreign heads of state that come into town and everything else. So that's kind of what we're known for, but a lot of people don't know we also do the investigations. Unfortunately, most of our time is tied up with the protection, but we do stuff. All right, so let's get into some interception. If you go through your kid's phone, you might come across some chats. Everyone knows like LOL, all this stuff. These kids all have their own lingo and text messages back and forth. Obviously, I'm not going to have you remember all of these, but just realize that when you go through your kid's phone and you come through like a 3-digit or 3-letter acronym, just Google it. You can find it. Some of the stuff like OC, Open Crib, could also mean a bunch of variations of that. So just kind of put it in the context with the text. But I just want to let you know that, hey, this is out there, and this is what the kids' type of code and the dialogues that they talk about. All right. And then also we talk about cyber slang, sus, like suspicious, all these different things. Again, Riz, drip, like your clothes. So just realize that there's this weird dialogue that these kids have. And, I was talking to my daughter and I said, hey, I'm like, that's sus. She's like, nobody says that anymore, Dad. That's like 2 years ago. And I'm like, okay, I don't know that. So, but anyways, it's always changing and everything else. So just to let you know that this is out there, and you might see a word and you're like, I have no clue what this means. Just Google it and you'll find like, hey, cyber slang. Okay, so, we talk about being online. Everything is online now. I mean, your car's online, everything. Your kids online, they go to school, they're online. They play video games, they're online. Everything. So this is kind of the reason why we got to talk about this, because your kids are playing online video games with people they have no clue who they are. And that's kind of a danger. Like, you would never let your kid just go in and play with a bunch of strangers and not knowing who they are really. So it's kind of interesting is what do your kids do when they're online? What do they do? Who are they texting? That sort of stuff. And the other problem is a lot of these tech companies are priding themselves in privacy, right? So like Snapchat. So you can send a picture to somebody and within 3 minutes it'll delete itself, and it's encrypted. So that it causes a problem, not only as you as parents, but us as law enforcement to acquire that information. If I do the forensics on the cell phone, I'm not going to be able to acquire those chats and those dialogues going back and forth. And another problem we have right now, we have a victim. I'm working on a case. It's out of North Carolina. There's a victim, underage female, who sent inappropriate pictures to an older male who it was talking. She didn't realize he was much older than her. And the problem is she sent the pictures via Snapchat. And not to get into too complicated, but the picture gets encrypted or gets compressed, right? So it's like a zip file, so that it can go across. It's smaller data. It goes across. We found the pictures on his phone, and he was sharing them with a bunch of people. Now we found the pictures on her phone. The problem is there's a thing called a hash value on photographs. And again, we're really getting into the weeds in this, but it's essentially the digital fingerprint or like the social security number for that picture. The problem is the digital fingerprint on her phone, the picture that she took initially, doesn't match the hash value on the picture that's on his because it was compressed. So they changed the photograph, even though it's the same photograph. And the defense is trying to say that these are not the same photographs. And hopefully the jury will just see through the defense's just crazy argument. But these are some of the challenges that we're facing as prosecutors and law enforcement. Okay. So again, like everything's online, the video games, all this stuff, shopping, you don't even have to go to the store anymore. So if there's one thing that you guys get out of this today, it is just, you got to communicate with your kids and talk to them about this and try to have that open dialogue. If that's the only thing you get out of this, it'll be a win. There's only so much that technology can do, only so much that we can catch. And that's why you as adults got to have this conversation with your kids and talk to them. And this even goes down to, starting with the younger kids, just talking about, they call it netiquette. Hey, when you're online, being kind to people, just as if you would in real life, and open. And then also some of the younger kids, say if they're looking up Dick's Sporting Goods, you can imagine what they could possibly come across, and not Dick's Sporting Goods. They're looking for a hockey stick and come across something completely different. So you got to have that talk, that dialogue with younger children, because now everyone's online. You give them a tablet, and I get it. It occupies them, right? Instead of you having to deal with them like, I'm busy, I got stuff to do. Here's a tablet. Go play on the tablet. Leave me alone. So you got to open that dialogue. Even talk about passwords. So getting off topic from children's, as far as passwords go, the amount of breaches that happen in companies that get compromised, you got to change your password for every site you use. I know it's a hassle. I know it's a pain, but I can't stress this enough. Whether you use a password manager or whatever the case may be, I don't like doing that, but that's better than having the same password across the board. I know it's a pain to remember it. One of the things that I do is that I'll have like a crazy long password, and then what I'll do is in the middle of it, I'll put the first initial of a website and the last letter of the website. So it was like Amazon, it would be AN, and then the rest of the craziness. The thing is, if the hackers get that password, they're not going to put together my little algorithm for being secure, but just something to think about, because if they compromise one, they call them rainbow tables. So you can download terabytes and terabytes of usernames and passwords, and then they just pump those in and try at all the different banks and try to log in and everything else. That's why you got to use a different password. But again, this is something we should educate our young ones on, is that, hey, just changing up your password, using a different password for each site. Again, I know it's a pain, and we have to memorize everything already. But that's just something to think about. And also, while we're on that, again, getting a little off topic, but I can't even tell you how many breaches I've been a part of. University of Maryland was breached. The government was breached. My Social Security number, they own everything. They got everything on me. My Social Security number, date of birth, all that stuff, it's out there. What I recommend you doing is putting a lockdown on your credit through the 3 credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And the 3 credit bureaus are getting better about allowing you to lock and unlock it and putting a freeze on it. It is a little bit of a hassle, but it's only a hassle when you go for a car loan or try to open a bank account or get another credit card, which how often are you doing that? And it's just as simple as getting the app and you can unlock it and then lock it. So they are making it easier. I'm actually on the verge of possibly doing this even for my kids. Just because all our Social Security numbers, everything else are out there, and it's only a matter of time before you become affected by this stuff. So just something to think about. Again, a little off topic from our topic, but I just want to let you know. And then when we talk about with teens and tweens, like the cyberbullying and sexting, just letting them know the possibility of that, and then also like meeting somebody offline. You meet somebody on the internet, and then they want to meet you in person. Like, hey, listen, this is not a good idea. You really shouldn't do it. Just because you think you know somebody, you really don't. So these are some of the topics that we're going to talk about. The different online risks, the inappropriate content, online privacy, online enticement, sexting, sextortion, and cyberbullying. Is what we're talking about. These are just some of the major threats. Out of all these, we'll go over it last. Sextortion is just becoming more and more prevalent, and we'll talk about what that is and the effects of it. It's very upsetting, and unfortunately, we had a case, and we'll talk about it. But anywhere from a 14-year-old all the way up to an 80-year-old. Victims. We had over 120 victims that we knew about in the United States and others in Canada and France and other places. But we'll talk about that later. But sextortion is by far becoming more and more prevalent, which is really upsetting. It's real disturbing. So we talk about inappropriate content again, like, hey, the Dick's Sporting Goods and all this sort of stuff. Like, hey, you can come across some of this stuff. The violence. I was at a cyber conference at Marshall University, and one of the professors there started researching the Ukraine-Russian war and the videos you see with the drones and taking people out. And the Russians can post some of the videos from the Ukrainians as theirs, and kind of the false propaganda that they were putting out. And he was doing research on it and trying to figure out some of those videos have the longitude, latitude of where these attacks are occurring, and he was plotting them all out. He was just doing this on his own time. And he talked about the effects of seeing this. You know, you're watching these literally drones going in and blowing people up, and just how disturbing it is. And he just had a mental breakdown from it. So again, I mean, you can come across all this stuff, the amount of inappropriate content that kids can see online. It's like, hey, you would never let your kid watch a rated R movie. And so we got to be very cognizant of the videos that are out there and what they can see. And also hate speech, all that sort of stuff, and risky or illegal behaviors. What's crazy is that, you know, we know about the World Wide Web, you know about that, but then you also have like the dark web and everything else underneath it. You get on Tor, which we won't even get into that, but you can literally get anything you want online, from a hitman to drugs, guns, whatever. You can purchase anything online when you start getting more into the underground, the black market, if you will, online. So this is just something we need to let our kids know about this stuff. So again, going back to this communication, I know it'd be really tough if you come to find out that your kid went to an inappropriate site. You gotta, I'm guilty of this too. I would be furious with my kid, but you gotta establish that trust with your son or daughter, and be calm and talk to them and let them know, hey, this isn't your fault, whatever you come across, and just advise them, hey, listen, let's talk about this. Why were you going to the site? Why are you viewing this? It's not appropriate. And so whether you're a teacher also, because, you know, I would think that hopefully my kids would come to myself, probably my wife, not really me, but they, you know, at least maybe even a teacher. So if you're a teacher, that would be something that would be very helpful. Just, hey, let them know that they can lean on you and they can talk to you about this stuff. Again, some of the stuff, don't frighten them, listen, answer questions, stay calm as best you can. I know it'll be infuriating. You're like, you know, I thought I taught you. It's kind of like my elderly, I have a great uncle. He probably gets scammed. I'm maybe once every 2 months, sends money to random people. They're like, what are you doing? He said, it was the IRS. They said I owe money. And they're like, oh my gosh. So they literally have, my great aunt has got him on lockdown now. So, and it's hard not to be, what are you doing? Like, how, you know, and he's a smart man. He's a lawyer and everything else. It just, again, these people, this is how they put bread on the table. This is what they do for a living. So we always got to stay calm and try to, hey, let's just hope this doesn't happen again. But every couple months, it seems like it does. So, and this is something again, going back to the communication, just talk to them. Hey, if you do come across something inappropriate, what should you do? Hit the back button, turn the screen off, close your computer down, whatever, and then talk to your parent, your mom or dad, or teacher, or grandparents, or whoever your guardian is. And the other thing is the cybertipline.org is a really good site to report this sort of stuff. If you do come across any of this, so your child or even you as an adult, that is from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. So if it's more of child inappropriate stuff, that's the website to go to. If it's something that somebody's trying to scam you, you can go through the ec3.org, and you can report it there. That's with the FBI. And what they do is, a lot of the times, unfortunately, it's frustrating if you get scammed out of, say, $5,000. That's a drop in the bucket as far as federal prosecution goes. It's not enough. The threshold isn't there. They won't investigate that. But the problem is, if everyone in this room had gotten scammed out of $5,000 by the same person, well, now we're talking. We have multiple victims, the amount of money that we can pool together. So that's why it behooves you to report that, because then when they start saying, hey, we've got the same suspect that's scamming these people, you can put those that threshold, that money threshold together, and now it's worth the taxpayers' money for us to investigate this and have the U.S. Attorney's Office involved. So that's why we advise you just to please report any of this stuff, as small as it may be. Just report it. It takes, yes, ma'am. EC3 is, if you Google that, it's the FBI's website. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's yeah. EC3. If you Google that, you'll find it. And again, it's as small as it may be. Even if you get an email soliciting, hey, the Nigerian prince that you're related to, and send me money. And even as small as that, you can report it to them. and that helps with us as far as prosecution goes. Some of the things we advised is with the cell phones. If you want to get a cell phone for your younger child, there are phones out there that can only call, so many numbers. Like, so you can just have mom, dad, 911, so like, hey, they can't, it's not really that a smartphone where they can access things. So there's technology out there that kind of, for lack of a better time, kind of puts the training wheels on that, right? And you can work your way up. Also, iPhone's really good at as far as the privacy settings, and you can lock it down. If my kids want to download an app, it's got to go through my wife or I to approve it. That's something I highly recommend. And we'll get into the technology side of it and what we can do to help secure our kids' devices and computers. And we'll talk about that later. Also, you can block websites and stuff. If you have it as a child mode on there, you can block certain websites so they can't go to certain things. And the way Android and Apple work is that you can block anything that's related to, say, pornography, and it'll block anything that it even thinks. Sometimes there's false positives, but who cares at the end of the day? As long as it blocks everything, you're good. All right. So we talk about online privacy. It's funny is when you drive around and you see cars with the kids' names on the back of the window, and you're just like, oh boy, and this is just something that's been beat into us. They call it OBSEC, or operational security, and it's infuriating when you see that, because I'm like, you're just handing out free information to whoever wants to see it. One of the things to think about also is when you go on vacation. I try to advise my kids and my wife, do not post anything online about us being away right now on vacation. Like, why would we even let people know that we're not home or we're not where we are? I'm like, just post it when we get home, once we're back. And why are we giving out information and basically open our house to threats to people possibly burglaring or robbing our house? And so that kind of goes on also is, hey, I don't want my kids posting anything online of themselves. They're always sitting there taking their pictures, and I'm like, no, stop. Do not post any of that stuff. Again, when you turn 18, have at it, do whatever you want. But right now, like, listen, you're young. We talk about our kids, my daughters play Roblox. So it's an online game, and you're interacting multiplayer with all these other kids and stuff. And then I'll go in there, and she's sitting there talking. Like, who are you talking to? Oh, that's my friend from school. Are you sure that's who it is? Yes, 100%. That's my friend from school. Okay. Don't be talking to strangers. It's the same thing in real life. We just don't have these conversations with our kids. Hey, don't talk to strangers online that you meet. You just don't know who they are. And we talk about sending and viewing inappropriate pictures. We touch base on this. This again, like, hey, don't be sharing your cell phone, the home address. Don't tell where you live. And she's playing online, and people are like, hey, where do you live? Hey, I live in Mars, Pennsylvania. Like, no, what are we doing? Don't tell people where you live. Hey, I don't care who they are. Don't tell people. Again, it's no different than if you met a stranger and the stranger comes, hey, where do you live? Hey, I live in Shaler. Like, what do we, So we got to have this, again, it goes back to this dialogue between your children and you, just letting them know, hey, the dangers of telling people why this is a bad idea too. That's another thing is explaining why that's a bad idea. Not only just telling them, but going through that. And again, the risk of sharing this information, hacking, stalking, identity theft, online scams, all this sort of stuff. And what you can do as a parent, establish rules. And it's so different than letting them, like we talked about, going outside. Hey, stay within the yard. Don't go across the street. It's the same thing with online. Just explain to them, hey, the rules. Don't be giving out information to anybody you don't know. Talk to them. Talk about the strong passwords, that sort of things, and about their friends list. And also, if they do come across something inappropriate, or somebody does start stalking them, or scam them. It's pretty funny. In Roblox, you can trade animal. I'm not that familiar with the game, but you can trade things. And my daughter got ripped off. And somebody said, hey, I'll give you this if you give me this. And she did it. And they're like, and I'll give you more if you want. And then they signed off. And she was all upset because she got ripped off. I said, well, lesson learned. I'm like, I'm glad it was in this game and not in real life, not like money or something. And I was like, that's the nature of the beast. And so it ended up being a good lesson for her. But just let them know about that sort of stuff. Okay, so online enticement. Um, this happens quite a bit, honestly, even with adults. This is a real thing where you start talking to somebody. I've had victims. You wouldn't believe this, but I have adult victims that literally thought they were married to somebody that they never met, and were sending them money continuously. I was like, at what point did you think you were married? You never even met this person in person? And like, nope. And they're like, are you sure I'm not married? I'm like, I'm positive you're not married. Like, it's crazy. But again, these people are really good at what they do. I had a victim who was repackaging iPads so that she was essentially a reshipper. And what this is, somebody buys with a stolen credit card, has it shipped to her address, and then she repackages this merchandise up and then sends it overseas. And the belief was that her boyfriend that she'd never met was building an orphanage down in South Africa. And so she was shipping all this stuff down to South Africa to the point she had to do multiple runs. When we interviewed the FedEx guy, he's like, yeah, this woman just kept coming up with all this stuff. He's like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, it's for an orphanage. And so it was all stolen. The problem is we track the credit card. Where are they shipping it to? They're shipping it to her house. So then we talk to her, go to arrest her, and find out that, hey, it was actually somebody else buying it, shipping to her. But this stuff happens all the time. And kids are very vulnerable to their belief, hey, they're not talking, they're talking to somebody their age. I had another victim where she thought she was talking to a boy that was her age, had taken some provocative pictures and sent it to them. And he said that, hey, he posted it on YouTube, said, if you don't give me money, I'm going to post this on YouTube. And so that's kind of gets into the sextortion, which we'll talk about. And we were fortunate enough that she told her parents contacted state police and they got involved, and she was too embarrassed, didn't want to move it any further, but we were able to contact YouTube. That's the one thing about the tech companies, as much as it's an ongoing battle with them because they're trying to protect your privacy, but they're making it harder for law enforcement as far as like encryption and all these different things. But they're very good with working with us when it comes to children. That is actually one thing that I will praise them, whether it's Apple, Microsoft, Google, whatever. They're very good about taking that stuff down. And when we advised them of it, they took the video down right away and then blocked it. And then were helping us track who the guy was that posted it. So anyways, this happens quite a bit. Most of them happen on social media. A lot of these things kind of getting into the sextortion stuff, but video games is another place. What they'll do is they'll start the conversation off in Roblox, and then let's move it to Google Chat and move it elsewhere. Or, hey, do you have a Snap? What's your Snap ID? We'll Snapchat, and they know it's encrypted. It makes it harder for law enforcement and getting into this stuff. And actually, sometimes it's kind of rare, but we've seen it where teens have been solicited by peers. It's actually kind of crazy, but it's more of like, hey, a boyfriend or girlfriend, and next they get solicited by them, and it goes downhill from there. Grooming is, and this kind of goes for everybody. This isn't just kids, but this is kind of where they send you gifts, they send you money, and then basically start developing that relationship with you and with your child, and thinking that that there's this romantic relationship or whatever. So just kind of be aware of that. All right. And so again, this kind of goes back to everything we've been talking about. Just talk to your child about the threats, about these things. Know who your child's online friends are. Let them know. You can always contact the local law enforcement is usually where you would start, your local police, if anything happens. If you think that, hey, your child was trying to meet up with somebody, especially in person, that's another big thing. Contact your local law enforcement and let them start the investigation. And usually we're on a task force with a lot of the local and state police. So we act as like consultants. So even if it won't go to the federal level, we still advise them on the steps that they can take to further their investigation. And again, we talked about the cybertipline.org is the best place to report this stuff. And the cybertipline.org is with the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. It's a phenomenal organization. It's a nonprofit. They help investigate all kind of material. You wouldn't believe the inappropriate material that's out there. And like a lot of some of my forensic analysts that view some of this material actually go to counseling. They actually meet with a psychiatrist and talk to them. And one guy told me that his psychiatrist had to go to a psychiatrist because of what he was telling him. That's how dark and evil some of this stuff is. And that's a whole nother ball of wax. Okay, so sexting is basically texting an inappropriate picture of yourself to somebody else. This actually is pretty prevalent. This happens especially now, which is kind of insane for us to think of as adults, but it does happen quite a bit, especially in high school is really where this is becoming more and more prevalent. And what's interesting is that say if the victim is under 18, well, now we're getting into CSAM, child pornography, essentially, and now that ramps everything up big time. So say if your daughter is 16, she sends an inappropriate text message with an inappropriate picture to a boy who's 18, and that he shares it with somebody. Now that's a federal crime right there. That's a felony. So the severity of this, even that's kind of where this goes to. So the problem is kids don't understand that. So if you have a son or daughter, like just let them know, hey, you may be sending inappropriate pictures to your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you think it's okay. Next thing you know, the federal police are involved, federal agents are involved, and you're going to go to jail. And we've got to have that criminal intent. But if it starts getting shared, that is a felony to share underage nude photographs of children. And kids just don't understand that how serious of a crime this is. So just something to think about. And ask them what apps they have on, hey, what's your favorite app, what's your favorite game, what are you playing? And talk to them that way. And that's another way that you know this dialogue. And my kids are, hey, you want to play Minecraft with us? All right, Minecraft. But again, now I know how the software works, I start learning about it, and then it also opens that trust with them. And I don't know, just something to think about. As people it is, I know, and we're not all gamers, but it's another way just to open that dialogue with the children. Okay, so sexually, this is by far the worst out of all of these. And what this is when somebody meets you online. So, kind of off topic here. Elderly fraud is another big thing. If any of you ever get a call from the IRS or like like, hey, the city of Pittsburgh, you didn't pay your parking ticket, and we're going to take you to jail. Go to Target right now and buy a gift card and send it to us. That is not how it works, right? And so, like, the IRS is never going to ask you to buy a gift card and send them the code. So don't, and if you can just let your parents know that this happens all the time. And luckily, we're trying to educate retailers. Say, hey, when somebody elderly comes in to buy a bunch of gift cards, to like, hey, by the way, I don't know why you're buying them, but just be advised if somebody is telling you to send and some people are very stubborn and say, hey, I'm doing it anyways. We had a retired lieutenant colonel, very smart guy, was sending money overseas to a woman who owned a antique restoration business. So she was restoring all these old furniture and stuff, and he's sending her money, and she's like, hey, the return on your investment's going to be like 8%, 9%. So she started sending him some money. So he's like, this is legit. He kept sending her money, sending her money. Well, the bank so he say he banked with PNC Bank. PNC picks up on and says, hey, I think you're being scammed. You're sending a lot of money overseas. It's like, this is my money. I can do what I want with it. And so they said, hey, listen, we're blocking this. We're not sending the money. So he gets furious, takes all his money out of PNC, opens up a Bank of America. So then starts doing the same thing, sending her money. And then next year, Bank of America picks up and says, hey, I think you're being scammed. It's my money. So then he moved it to the Navy Federal Credit Union. And luckily, the director of security there is former Secret Service. One of the analysts picked up on it. He calls us. So we go out and talk with him, say, hey, listen, I think you're being scammed. And he's like, why does everyone keep saying that? It's a legitimate business and all this stuff. So come sent over $600,000 to overseas. All his retirement, everything was cleaned out. And so when he finally realized that he was being scammed, he said, what are we going to tell my wife? I was like, That's on you. You know, I don't know what to tell you. But this is legit. This happens all the time. Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. No. For the most part, it is mostly loan. There might be a few other individuals involved that are helping launder the money or helping obfuscate the funds. But for the most part, they are loan people. Now, so the thing with cybercrime is no different than regular crime. Like everyone's got their ways. Like usually the Hispanic gangs are known for having machetes and knives and stuff, right? And then so you have like your Crips and your Bloods, or they're doing drive-by shootings. Everyone's kind of got their signature, right? The Nigerians are notorious for ripping people off, doing romance scams. The Russians, the Ukrainians, the Romanians, everyone in the Eastern Bloc, they're notorious for credit card scams. I can't tell you how many Romanians we've arrested around Pittsburgh area that are setting up skimmers to steal your credit card information. That's just what they do. Gas pump skimmers, all that sort of stuff. Funny, even with like the Chinese are crushing it right now on us. Like they are stealing everything from us. Oh, the Pakistanis, the Indians, that's another, they have the call centers. So going back to your, like, everyone's kind of got their niche. It's funny is the Chinese are very sneaky. They get in and they steal your stuff and they get out. The Russians, they like kick in the front door and are looking at the cameras like, what are you going to do about it? And then they get out and they're right. It's like, hey, there isn't much we're going to be able to do about it. We know who they are, and there's the Russians, they protect their own. And that actually is the case across the board. And not to get too into the weeds, but we had a cyber case. University of Pittsburgh Medical Center got breached. We had 60,000 victims. All W-2s were getting. The hacker that stole it would get online around tax season, so like right now, and he would sell all the W-2 information. So we were catching everyone that was buying this stuff downstream. And we actually identified one of the individuals. He was actually a Venezuelan that was living in Miami. And what they would do is they would use the W-2 information. Back in the day, this is so 2014, so it was a while ago. But when you filed with TurboTax, you could get some of your tax returns in the form of an Amazon gift card. So then they would use that Amazon gift card to buy electronic merchandise, iPads and that sort of stuff. And then they would send it to Miami. And then from there, they'd reship it over to South America. So we were catching those people. People were buying up. We even had an Air Force, an airman that was in the state of Washington that we arrested. So we just couldn't catch the hacker. But my point is, there was part of the funny story is that the Venezuelan, he got wind that we were looking for him, and he fled to Venezuela. And we arrested his wife and his mother. They were in Brazil, and we found them and we arrested them. Well, when we searched his wife's cell phone and went through her emails, he had emailed her, said, do not come back to Venezuela. So what happened was there's something called a red notice, is where you can, with other countries that cooperate with us, if they fly into that country, they'll detain them for us, and then we'll pick them up. And then, so unfortunately, Venezuelan isn't actually one of our closest allies, to say the least. And so we had put the red notice on him. And then when we found out he had flown to Venezuela, we're like, oh, dang it. So we tried to remove that, and it was too late. The Venezuelans saw that we were looking for this guy. And so they arrested him. They detained him, and they said, why are the Americans looking for you? And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, well, you know what we're talking about? Let's help refresh your memory. So they stripped him down naked, handcuffed him to a chair, put air conditioning units in there, and doused him with cold water, and had him like hypothermic and everything else for like 26 hours, 27 hours. And then eventually said, okay, I'll tell you what's going on. We're ripping Americans off through this tax scheme and everything else. They said, okay, perfect. Give us $10,000 or we're going to turn you over to the Americans. So he had street justice. So I was like, oh, that's probably worse than he would have gotten in the United States. He would have gotten 3 meals and a cot here. But they tortured him. And so unfortunately, we didn't arrest him, but I think justice was served, I guess, kind of. No. Funny, I mean, in all seriousness, honestly, I don't know of any cyber operations that have ever happened in Egypt, honestly. So kudos to you guys. What's that? Moroccan, no. I mean, so the closest maybe in Egypt or Morocco, like say, like we've had suspects that vacation in like Sharm el Sheikh, and so then we arrest them there. Like sometimes the Russians or Romanians will leave their country, and then we'll pick them up. But that's really in Morocco is another place where we've arrested individuals, cyber individuals that we were looking for and going after. Yes, ma'am. Yep. So most of these platforms are going to that technology or going to encrypted, so make it difficult. So yes, that is for the most part encrypted, but we've are actually going back to the UPMC case. There was a platform he was using. I won't say, but there was a platform he was using, and there's another country who's capturing all of that data and they provided it to us. I just got lucky that we were in a meeting and I was pitching the case. The U.S. Attorney's Office wanted us to close it down, and we've been looking for this hacker for 7 years. And I gave everything I had. I said, he talks on this platform, and they're like, we have all the communications that are on that platform. So anything that wasn't encrypted, we were able to see. And from there, we were able to track his Bitcoin account that he registered, and we were able to find him and locate him and arrest him. And what was crazy, he was in Michigan. But yeah, so for the answer your question, I get sidetracked. I apologize. But squirrel. Yep. Yeah, so that's a whole nother. We have something called a kill chain, 72 hours. We don't like the. We would rather be sooner, but if you do end up sending money to somebody, we have 72 hours to retrieve it. If it's a gift card, most likely it's gone. That money's gone. But from like a normal bank transaction, if you send money from your bank to somebody else's bank, usually this is, again, we're getting off topic, but business email compromises. It's where your company gets an email and there's usually urgency, hey, you need to send this money right now to this bank account, blah, 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 blah. And then they send the money. And I mean, this happens daily. Cryptocurrency? Cryptocurrency is there? Um, yeah, the cryptocurrency. So there's blockchain, and we can start following that. But think of not to go down the whole road of cryptocurrency. That's a whole nother. We could be here for hours talking about that. But so think of with cryptocurrency. The problem with cryptocurrency is think of say if I've got $1,000 and then I go to this store and I get a receipt. I buy something, then I sell something for $1,000. I get $1,000 back, right? So now you still have that money, but it's trying to track that. The other thing is like think of when you go to the casino, you buy chips, you get $1,000 worth of chips. That's what they call their the name's escaping me, but essentially this is kind of how you launder the money and obfuscate that money. So the minute you put it into into this company, and then I get it out as a different like Ethereum as opposed to crypto as opposed to Bitcoin, it's hard to track that to see that hey it comes out. So they launder that money, they put it through the wash essentially, and so it gets really hard to track that money. But eventually when we find that person, we figure out who it is. You just keep following the money back, and so with every case you just follow the money for the most part. We find that person, we can still seize the money, try to get the money back from them one form of way with their assets or whatever the case may be. So going back to sextortion, again, sorry about that. We get way off topic. And this is the problem with cybercrimes is because it's so vast, right? I mean, there's so many different forms of cybercrime and breaches and everything else. This is actually the case I was talking about where this kid here actually committed suicide after receiving a sextortion email. And said, hey, listen, again, he thought he was talking to a female, very similar to your case. He thought he was talking to a female. One of this case that we had over 100 victims that we knew about, and they range from Canada, France, the U.S., all over the world. And what we did was we were able to track the suspects back to the Ivory Coast. the suspect in the Ivory Coast is doing it. We were able to show through location data and all that sort of stuff, not to get too much into the investigation portion of it, but we're able to, without a doubt, we knew it was coming from this guy. And in this case, our victims range from 14 up to 81 years old or 82 years old. And out of this, we had 5 victims that committed suicide. One of the victims, he was a 22-year-old in Michigan, had committed suicide 12 minutes after receiving the sextortion text that if you don't pay me, I'm going to release this to your families. So this is one of those things, as I would tell you, sextortion is the worst. It is the worst. We went over it. We don't have an MOU or a memorandum of understanding with the Ivory Coast. We don't. There's no agreement with them so that if we arrest one of their citizens here in the States, or they contact us, hey, can you arrest this guy? He's a citizen of the Ivory Coast, and then we'll extradite him to back to the Ivory Coast. We don't have that agreement. So we talked to them. We talked to one of their chief prosecutors and one of the chief of police, and they agreed to meet with the case agent for 30 minutes. So we'll give you 30 minutes. You tell us what the case involved, and we'll determine whether or not we're going to prosecute this guy. So they went over, met with them. They laid the whole case out, said, hey, this is how we know it's him. This is what happened. Oh, and by the way, we had 5 kids commit suicide because of this guy. And they were like, okay, that's enough. I think if there weren't the suicides, they would have blown it off. There was a lot of money loss. This was also the same case where the guy was paying $1,200 a month. And then after he stopped paying because he lost his job, and the guy released the photos. The big problem with these cases is embarrassment. Nobody wants to go up, it is embarrassing. And then these poor victims have to come forward and testify and everything else. It's such a dirty, horrific crime, and you feel for these victims across the board. But luckily, with this case, there were some victims that were willing to come forward and testify. And we didn't get hands on the suspect, but when the case agent and the U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney, flew out of Ivory Coast and landed in Heathrow, they had emailed them and said, hey, we have him in custody. So I don't know exactly what the penalties are in the Ivory Coast or what their judicial system is, but they did arrest him, and that was the best we could do, unfortunately. Ideally, we would like to have extradited him and brought him to the United States, but it didn't work out that way. In this case, kind of going back to you, there was actually a few other individuals that were arrested also that were involved in laundering the money that was being sent to this person and get them. There was this kid. Initially, they wanted $5,000 or they'll release it. He's like, I don't have that kind of money. So he settled on $150 and say he was sending from his college fund, sending $150, and then he couldn't pay, and they said they're going to release the photos, and he unfortunately took his life. So again, just something that we really need to talk to our kids about and just realize, hey, don't send inappropriate pictures. Yes, sir. Yes and no. I don't want to give away our secrets. But think of it this way, right? Even like Snapchat or whatever, when you send that picture that, hey, it deletes or whatever, who's to say that I don't have another phone and I'm taking the picture of the picture you just sent, right? There's no way, because in Snapchat, if you screenshot the thing, it alerts the person that sent it that, hey, they screenshot it. So then you know that, hey, they screenshotted your photo that you sent. But again, there's no way of knowing if they take a picture of the picture. Just don't send pictures. Anyway, sir. Gravitate to. Yep. That's a good question. That's a good question. Well, so going back to my UPMC hacker, when we were engaging with him online, he's only coming out for that small window of tax season, and after April 14th, he disappears, and we have to wait till next year when W-2s are released, and then we can engage with him again. That's why that case was so hard. But it's funny is we said our online undercover said, hey, we'll send you money via like PayPal. And he's like, what are you, the cops? He's like, nobody does PayPal. It's like, so there's things like that. They're like, that's stupid. Nobody does that. And so they are leery of more legitimate platforms, that can be tracked. Most of them want to do cryptocurrency because they know that you can, that money is really hard to track. There's companies that dedicate to themselves to trying to track Bitcoin and cryptocurrency transactions. So that's like another red flag. If somebody asks you, hey, we're the IRS, send us Bitcoin. You're like, the IRS doesn't collect Bitcoin. So that's something more the legitimate platforms. And the other problem with this is these chat platforms are changing all the time. Like, hey, nobody uses TeamSpeak anymore. Everyone's on Discord. And then you're like, hey, nobody uses Discord anymore. And it just keeps evolving and they just keep changing it, which makes our job harder because you just don't know what's the latest and greatest. You got to be like embedded and in the weeds with these people and figure that out. All right. Hey, one of the things, yes, ma'am. Yes. I'm sorry, Miss Last. Oh boy. Yeah. So again, this is like a whole nother topic. One of the scams that we're seeing right now, it's pretty prevalent, is the AI voice. We can change a voice, right? So all I need is 5 seconds of your voice. So you say, hey, thanks for reaching me. I'm sorry I couldn't answer the phone right now. Please leave a message. That's all I need. And I can actually take that section, that MP3 of your voice, and upload it to the AI, and then I can create a whole conversation. And then what they'll do is they'll create like, hey, mom, I'm in trouble. I need you to send me money. I've been arrested, or it's usually with the grandparents. Don't tell anybody I'm in trouble. Send me money, please. This is where you need to send it to. That is becoming more and more common. And also we're seeing that with kind of it's kind of a variation of your business email compromise where they send the money or they send an email and say, hey, send money to this bank account. Now I'm calling you as an employee. Hey, this is Bill Gates, the CEO of Microsoft. You need to send money to this account right now, and because they can, mimic your voice. That's another huge thing. AI is a double-edged sword, just like anything with technology. Unfortunately, people are using it for evil. But I've used it. I'm not a coder, I'm not a programmer, but I've used it to actually. We're going back to that case I was telling you about where the MD5 hashes, the hash values didn't match the pictures from the victim's phone to where the suspect had. There's something called perceptual hashing, where you look at the picture and it can go by pixel and see if the hue, the brightness, the color, if they match. And I literally wrote a program within 3 hours using AI assistance to create a perceptual hashing program to compare a bunch of photographs in a folder and see what the differences are and what's the percentage that they most likely match. And so again, that would be something we would present to the jury and be like, hey, through this perceptual hashing, it's obviously the same picture, even though behind the scenes they're not matching up. But anyways, AI is a problem, and the hackers are using it now to write nefarious code and everything else. I don't. It's only going to evolve. And it's just making its cat and mouse with these hackers, and with the schemes that they're pulling. Yes, sir. Say what are the platforms that? Oh, I gotcha. There's so many out there, and the problem with there isn't like say like Discord. It's a very even like Snapchat. It's all Instagram. They're good if they're used for good. If it's like there isn't one particular thing like red flag that hey if they got this app on there that it's definitely nefarious, right? I mean there are, but the problem is a lot of these kids are using these platforms for evil instead of or you're getting enticed or groomed through these that are legitimate text, legitimate communication platforms, but the problem is the bad guys are using. And then, and there isn't one. Google Chat is what we're seeing for the most part, where they take the conversation from Facebook Messenger or Instagram to like an underground type platform. On my way over, I apologize. We're almost done. Okay, so we talk about text options. Some of the solutions that you can do. There's a bunch of filtering software out there, monitoring software, really good, and we'll talk about with them. I don't endorse any of these, meaning like the Secret Service does not endorse any of them, but I can let you know what the top 5 are, and I'll show you that here in a second. Again, just take your kid's phone and look through what apps they have. What's the communication? What are they using? A lot of the monitoring platforms can tell you what they're using the most and the time spent in each app. So it's really good. Again, there's always ways around this. So it's not the end all be all, but it's going to help. And going through and talking to them, you can also talk to your cell phone provider on different options, and they can help work with you on monitoring your kids. All right. So here's some of the best monitoring platforms that are out there. Again, I don't endorse any of these. These are like, hey, this is what the Secret Service recommends. These are just options, and there's plenty of them out there. It seems like Bark and Aura and Norton Family are usually in the top 3 all the time, and you can even track your kid. You can put all kinds of lockdowns on there and keywords. So if they search certain things, all this, it can alert you. And some of them are like $10 a month. But it's worth it, and they work on iPhone and Android, and you can put it on the computer too, tablets, all that sort of stuff. So there's that. Like I said, we're just going back to the communication again. Engage with them. Hey, maybe play the game with them. All that sort of stuff. Just learn yourself. Hey, what are the dangers of Instagram? Maybe you see an app, you don't know anything about it, Google. Or any of that communication we talked about, the acronyms, just Google it. And try to figure out what it means in the context. All right. Here's another interesting. Yes, sir. Yes. Mhm. Yeah. So that's so to answer your first question, they're usually laptops and cameras. They have that the shutter that you can close. I would advise that. Another thing for your personal security, I would turn Bluetooth off on your phone. I'm not gonna tell you why, but you should probably have Bluetooth turned off on your phone whenever you can. Like, hey, when you sync it up with your earbuds or whatever, that's fine. But then you're done, turn it off. Just a word to the wise. Yeah, I know and that's the problem is that you create this whole environment, right? And everything like you come home to your house and hey, the lights turn on. That's a whole nother, yeah. Again, it's just the problem is I'm super paranoid because I know too much, and so then I end up like going like crazy with it, and my wife's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "You don't understand." So like there is like a fine line, right? And it's like I don't care if you want to look through my phone, have at it. I don't have anything on my phone that's secretive. So there's always like that side of the coin is like, whatever. I mean, you can only be paranoid so much. Like, hey, I don't want my Ring doorbell looking at me, or like, does it really matter walking into your house or whatever? But what was the second question? Oh, yeah. So if you Google digital opt out, if you Google that, because I do that just because of the nature of my job. I've arrested a lot of bad people internationally. We went after a group down in South Africa, and these guys are well connected, well funded. They told me, "Hey, we're going down there to arrest a bunch of Nigerians that are doing romance scams." I said, "Let's go." And they said, "You might want to pump the brakes. These guys have actually executed a witness in Texas." I was like, "Oh boy." So we had a successful operation. We arrested these guys, had judges, police, all kinds of people on the payroll. So it was very nerve-wracking to say the least, because we didn't know who we could trust. So to answer your question, I do that digital opt-out. But there's only so much you can hide. But it's amazing what I can find about you just on open source intel. They call it OSIN, OSIN, open source intel. I can find everything about your previous place. I can find out who your neighbors are and find out their information. And it's all you have to do is pay a little bit of money, and you can get a ton of information. So the problem is a lot of that they're getting from like the credit bureaus and the sort of stuff like that. When you open a bank account, a lot of the banks and they sell your information, and that's how they collect all this stuff. But if you Google digital opt out, it's a pain in the neck when you got to go through all these different processes and say, "Hey, lose my information. I don't want you to share my information," all that sort of stuff. That's a way. Before we go, one last thing. We talked about sex extortion. If your explicit content is out there, if your child does unfortunately share some inappropriate content and we want to try to take it down, the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children will work with these technology companies to get that removed from servers. It's not an end all be all, but it'll make some huge headway in getting that image removed. So that's kind of one of the most important things. And the cyber tip line we talked about, and we also talked about EC3 with the Bureau, and that's if you're a victim of any sort of cyber crime. Get it? Any questions? Yes, ma'am. No, it's influence on sextortion, you mean, or just being as careful? Because hey, I'm an influencer. I want people to reach out. I want people to message me, and that sort of thing. They want to be a YouTuber, right? Yes, yes, yeah, an influencer, yeah, YouTuber, influencer. You know, honestly, I haven't had that many cases that involve influencers, and I don't know if it's just because we don't have that many in our area. Because I'm really tied to the Pittsburgh area, and not going across the country. But anytime you put yourself out there, whether you're an influencer, whatever the case may be, you know, you're going to get possibly doxxed or swatted. Swatting, for those you don't know, is basically where I find out where you live and I call the police, whether I spoof your number, like the caller ID looks like it's coming from your number, and I say, hey, I need help. This person just kidnapped me, everything else. And then next you know, the SWAT team showing up at your house, and that's called swatting. And it's obviously you didn't need any help. Again, not to get off on a sidetrack, but it's an interesting story. There was a case that we had. Victim was getting cyber stalked, bullied. This poor family, husband and wife, were getting all kinds of stuff delivered to their house, like Domino's Pizza would show up with 10 pizzas. They would get magazines that they never ordered. And, you know, you click that bill me later. So the next, you know, they're getting a bill for these magazines that they never ordered. So I didn't order these. It was all kinds of things. And what was crazy is they have a deaf child and they were getting magazines that related to deaf people. And then they knew that she liked to garden. So they was getting like Better Homes and Garden were getting delivered. And to the point where they were getting so many food deliveries that there was like a 10-mile radius around their house that all the food companies knew that they have to go pick their food up. They can't get it delivered. So this case, we were advising the local police on this case on how to track down who's doing this to these people. And where the case really broke open was there was a kid from Duquesne University that went missing. And the suspect actually called and swatted these people's house and said, hey, this is the missing kid from Duquesne. I'm trapped in these people's basement. I was able to just get the internet. And what he did was he didn't call. He put it in a Foodler. He ordered Foodler, like one of these food apps to get food delivered to your house, and put it in the comments. Said, this is so-and-so from Duquesne, missing child from Duquesne University. Please send help. I'm trapped in the basement. I was able to get internet. Send help now. So next, you know, the Pittsburgh police were ramping up, SWAT team and everything else. They called Ross Township and said, hey, we got an incident. We found the Duquesne kid. He's at this address. And they said, no, it's not real. We know who that victim is. She's been getting cyber stalked or bullied or whatever. It's not real. And unfortunately, like the Pittsburgh police actually had notified the family that they possibly found him. And so then the family got their hopes up and everything else. They ended up finding the kid. About a month later, he had drowned in the river. Unfortunately, he was intoxicated. He fell into the river and drowned, and they found him underneath one of the bridges. But because of that incident, it opened up the case, and then the U.S. Attorney's Office said, we're taking this case on. We need to find this individual. And we ended up finding him. He was in South Carolina, but he was a neighbor of theirs. It was like lived like diagonally across from him. And kid was like 19, 20 years old. I don't know what his motivation was, but just crazy stuff. about that. I can't remember where I was going with that story, but yeah. Anyways, any other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, that's the magic question, right? And it's like, uh, yeah, yeah. So I personally am an Android guy, but like iPhones are great because Apple's got it pretty locked down. As far as like with Android, it is kind of the wild wild west on the Play Store. You can put an app on there, and Android's getting better, or Google is getting better about regulating the apps on there, and that's just from a safety standpoint for you and I and for kids and everything else. I don't know if one platform is better than the other because the monitoring software works on both of them. Apple seems to have it a little bit more locked down. But I actually like Android better. I actually, full disclosure, I hate Apple because they are not very law enforcement friendly, and but we have ways to getting into the phones now. We've got that capability, but Apple doesn't cooperate. Yeah, and that's going to be up to you as a parent, right? Your kid, it depends on the maturity of your child. And like, my daughters are 16 and 14. And I literally had an argument. Like my wife and I almost got divorced over giving them phones. I'm like, no, absolutely. Again, I know too much and I'm paranoid. And then my wife's like, hey, what happens if there's something going on at school, like an active shooter or something? And I said, well, they shouldn't be on their phones calling the police anyways. Hopefully somebody else is. So we get into this argument about why they really need phones. Like, what are they doing that they really, really need a phone? It's like, other than getting a hold of them, we get so used to, like, what did we do 20 years ago when nobody had cell phones? How do we ever get a hold of our kids? It's like, we can figure this out. It's so, and I just don't know if the benefits of giving them a phone outweigh the dangers and the harm of having the phone. And I know it's a convenience thing, so we all want that. I don't know. I lost that battle, by the way. Both my kids have phones, and so I like, it's the wife rules. I know, so it's tough. But again, that's going to be like a personal question, and it's like one of the things. If kind of depend, and there's devices out there. There's smartwatches, stuff where you can track your kids. So it's like, hey, now they have like the Apple device AirTags where you can track your luggage. Well, you can track your kid too, or your dog, or whatever. So there's some good out there, right? And some of these devices they have where you only have like 3 phone numbers that they can call. So it's not a smart device. You're like, okay, we've still got the bonus of having a phone and being able to reach out to mom and dad or the police. But at the same time, they don't have all that accessibility of apps and all this sort of stuff and dangers. And realize that also, like Apple and or Google, Samsung, all these tech companies realize that this is a real threat, and they do have devices out there that you can lock down and approve only certain apps. Like if my daughter wants to download a game, you're like, what is this? My kids aren't on Instagram, they're not on TikTok, they're not on any of that stuff. I just feel like there's no good coming out of this. What's that? I am. I think. I hope. I think this. I'm 99% sure. I haven't done forensics on their cell phones yet, but yes, sir. Yes. Just so I'm a gamer too. I'm a nerd. And that's actually how I got into the computer business, is because I convinced my parents we needed a computer because you needed it for school. And we're talking long, long time ago. Like there was no online school when I still had like AOL dial up and Prodigy and stuff. I mean, we're talking like old school. And so the computer my parents bought wasn't very good. So I ended up upgrading and like adding RAM. And so then I started learning how to build computers. It was all driven by video games. And we actually recruit kids that are like, hey, going into cybersecurity and stuff because of video games and programming and all that sort of stuff. I know as parents, we don't want our kids playing games, but it actually is an opportunity to get into the technology in the tech world. And it seems like gamers are the best programmers and really good at cybersecurity and doing forensics and that sort of stuff. But as far as safety with playing video games, just don't tell people information. It's no different than I wouldn't go up to you and tell you where I live, what my home phone number is, and what my address is, and everything else. Like you got to be careful of who's on the game playing. You're on Discord if you're in, or even in the game, in the chat in the game, and you're talking to people, like, don't give out any information about yourself. It's actually kind of tough to track you down and figure out exactly where you are, to SWAT you, unless you're giving out information. Like, don't throw those breadcrumbs out and put your name on the back of the car. You're proud of your kid that plays soccer and you got their real name on the back of there. Like, why are we giving out that information? And again, this is coming from me personally, just because I'm paranoid. So, I mean, we just see how some of these things, like, is anything going to happen to your kid because you put your kid's name on the back of the car? Probably not. But, you just never know. And so as far as video games go, you just got to know who you're talking to. And so that's the one thing is, usually my daughter, when she plays with her friends at school, she'll have her phone up and FaceTiming with them while she's playing Roblox. So, and that's how she doesn't communicate, or you're not allowed to communicate with anybody on the game, everything else. But yeah, as far as, there's not much you can do to protect yourself, but just don't put yourself out there like an influencer and give them information. Dr. I, I'm sorry, I could talk all day.
They are very hungry. And
Yes.
Very thirsty
Sorry.
For a lot of information.
Yep.
Thank
Sir.
you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We just need your help maybe for another session with the kids.
God willing is not the last one. And I spoke with Brian before. We're going to have about, this is actually was like what we call the scanning, just the outline for what's going on. And we're going to have a little bit more. And he's very generous with his time. He's a very good Catholic committed, and he knows about the Orthodox Church. He knows about our church, and he knows about how we need help. All of us, we need help. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it greatly. Okay. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Make us worthy to pray thankfully, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Daily bread. And lead us into temptation, but deliver us from. Go in peace, the peace of the Lord be with you.